Be right with you.
You're the Oracle?
Bingo. Not quite what you were expecting, right? Almost done. Smell good, don't they?
Yeah.
I'd ask you to sit down, but you're not going to anyway. And don't worry about the vase.
What vase?
That vase.
I'm sorry.
I said don't worry about it. I'll get one of my kids to fix it.
How did you know?
Oh, what's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?
In a recent interview with Clayton Morris on Redacted, U.S. Border Patrol agent turned filmmaker J.J. Carroll discussed his new documentary and the fact that prison facilities are being built in all 50 states to hold millions of political dissidents.
And there's detention facility bids to build individual detention facilities in every state in the union. And then she goes on to say to me, well, JJ, who do you think they're built for? And she says in this interview, they're for dissidents, American dissidents.
The FEMA camps were reported decades ago. This was never an outrageous conspiracy theory. The U.S. government has been framing American patriots as the enemy for decades. And the reason should be obvious. Those who have been in control of the U.S. government for generations have no interest in serving the people in accordance to the Constitution or otherwise. Our country is being destroyed from within, and the rule of law has been weaponized against those who defend it. Hundreds of innocent Americans have been arrested and thrown in jail because they chose to peacefully protest the 2020 stolen election. And others, such as Jeremy Brown, a Green Beret who was approached in late 2020 by federal agents trying to recruit him for the Jan 6 false flag operation, was arrested after going public with this information by the same federal agents. He was put in maximum security prison where he remains to this day, his 1,000th day in federal prison. Hundreds of innocent Americans have been in jail for years, and several have been tortured. Much of America is okay with the fact that hundreds are rotting in jail for a peaceful protest. It's already become the norm. While it's definitely worth celebrating the release of Julian Assange, the American people have never been more divided. The Daily Mail reports that more than 40% of Americans think a new civil war will be fought within the next decade. According to one poll, more than 4 in 10 U.S. voters say the country is likely to get ripped apart in a second civil war within 5 years. And another shows that over 100 million Americans say that civil war is coming. Based on the recommendation of think tank Policy Horizons, Canada has been preparing for an American civil war, including cyber attacks and grid failures following the 2024 presidential election. The soldiers of the New World Order are not going to die easy. They are apparently willing to spark a nuclear conflict with Russia and are already writing new laws to bring back the draft.
So women have never been required to register for the draft, but that could soon change thanks to lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
Martha, good morning. The Senate version of the National Defense Authorization Act, which sets out military and national security priorities, would require women to register for selective service. It concludes, quote, "This is a necessary and fair step, making it possible to draw on the talent of a unified nation in a time of national emergency." Now, there are two different versions of this bill, one in the House, one in the Senate, so it's possible women in the draft could get dropped as lawmakers iron out the differences.
So while women may get dropped from this bill, our government is bringing back the draft while provoking a major war with Russia. They have their bunkers, and they've already jailed hundreds for protesting an election. So they'll definitely jail draft dodgers and everyone else who stands in their way, unless we unite against them. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
You're cuter than I thought. I can see why she likes you.
Who?
Not too bright, though. You know why Morpheus brought you to see me. So, what do you think? Do you think you're the one?
Honestly, I don't know.
You know what that means? It's Latin. Means know thyself. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Being the one is just like being in love. No one can tell you you're in love, you just know it. Through and through. Balls to bones.
On the heels of that, now, so, we had this terrible situation with the flooding and all this stuff. Then right on top of that, and that's, all throughout the Northeast, but particularly North Carolina, as we mentioned, and all the things that are taking place there are still being unpacked dramatically, and the people there being impacted dramatically. And in the middle of all that, out of nowhere, the Biden administration changes rules about policing and how the military can be involved with policing. Now, Biden, in any case, is the lame duck administration. It's on its way out. And even if Harris won, it's not Biden, right? But you don't, in the closing days of your administration, introduce something this sweeping that has that many changes. And this is something to watch because it's exactly in that emergency powers mold. And so it's DoD Directive 5240. DoD intelligence and intelligence-related activities and defense intelligence component assistance to law enforcement agencies and other civil authorities. Now, there's a lot of things that they added in there, and I think very shady with the language as well. The only thing I'm going to quote from their directive, and it's a weird thing to drop this 3 weeks before an election, less than 3 weeks. There's a section in here which is totally new, and it says, assistance in responding with assets with potential for lethality, they can kill you, at any situation in which a reasonably foreseeable that providing the required assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury. It also includes all support for civilian law enforcement officials in situations where a confrontation between civilian and law enforcement and civilian individuals or groups is reasonably anticipated. So you get any kind of election skirmish, you can roll in this military force behind the police. That's what it reads to me. There's no reason to include that in there. And also, it's against the law. We have a whole thing about Reconstruction after the Civil War. And there's a whole piece of law in there about posse comitatus, which is you can't have military patrol those streets. They're not federal. We have regular police for that. This goes completely against that. And it's not even suggesting, it's suggesting in situations where they need assistance. It's not saying in a total emergency of breakdown of society, martial law, COG style. No, this is just saying, hey, if anything gets out of hand, you can roll all of these assets in and have them use lethal force. So this is one of those skirmishes, it's like you go over the line of scrimmage and they're looking around seeing, did anyone notice we just seized a whole bunch of powers? And there's a precedent in history there, which is in the Nazi regime, where they create something in 1934 called the Enabling Act, all based, of course, around the Reichstag fire. And, we get so much of this kind of false flag imagery from that event. But it's worth noting that, had the Nazis been stopped there from what they were doing, from creating that into law, and they did it the same way. Nobody voted on their piece of legislation either. This thing, nobody votes on it. It's just a DoD directive. Mm-hmm. That's not how the country works, and it's not how any kind of functioning democracy would work, where an administration rolls that in through their own military. the timing on it's very suspect. They want to know if they take those actions, if they can be prosecuted for them later. And if they put this out there, they can say, well, we told everybody. So, that's a good message to send back to them. And it's another reason to vote this administration out of office, which I'm hoping, beyond hope, that happens, because the idea of Harris Waltz in there, starting in 2025, or waking up after the election with that as the reality.
Don't say it.
It would literally, it's just such the wrong direction for the country that I don't know how things would function in that situation, because their penchant is to destroy all free speech. And it's a truly consequential election in that sense. It's not even Republican, Democrat. It is literally, get these guys out. Now, one last thing I'll say about the election is every indicator that I've read about how a normal election plays out, Harris Waltz are losing. There's no question about it. And I think they know that they're losing, and that's why you see them shouting at their election stops and things like that. This is not, Kamala Harris had a really disastrous interview with Fox News, Brett Baer, and he just asked her, real questions for once, which is, do you take any responsibility for letting 20 million people in, and all the crimes and all the things that are associated with it? And we haven't even seen the ramifications to those particular cities. Massachusetts is one of them, our home state right here, where they're laying out billions of dollars for this situation, and for whatever it is they have cooked up in the background in relation to it. So she had no answers, and she tried to do that kind of typical, tap dance, and it just wasn't flying. So she got caught rather flat-footed, and I think it may be like Bobby and Trump linking up in August was a real turning point in the campaign. I mean, the assassination attempt, and then the second one that failed, was a huge turning point, and it lets you know the nature of the stakes, I think, that are involved. But Bobby and Trump, and creating that alliance, changes the ball game completely. And now I think that this is also, her general collapse in October, I think, is also a game changer. We'll see how they play out. And the thing that was interesting was someone who was doing the lip reading on Obama and Biden said, it looks like Obama said to Biden, Biden was saying, well, she's not doing as well as I would be doing. And Obama said, no, she's not, but there's still time. I thought that was weird, because they're actually, in political terms, there's not really a whole lot of time for them to do what they want to do. So, 17 days, it's not really enough time to do anything campaign-wise. So I really wondered about that comment. And also the fact that these guys know that they're two of the most watched figures, of all, and yet they're out there talking very openly. They know it's going to get picked up. That's the weirdness around that one. So, very unusual elements there. That and the UFO boost this week with the whole threat language and grabbing an old story. To me, there's something bubbling under the surface, and it may be the Hail Mary pass for the October surprise.
Well, I better have a look at you. Open your mouth, say ah.
Ah.
Okay. Now I'm supposed to say, that's interesting, but then you say.
But what?
But you already know what I'm going to tell you.
I'm not the one.
Sorry, kid. You got the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something.
What?
Your next life, maybe. Who knows? That's the way these things go. What's funny?
Morpheus. He almost had me convinced.
I know. Poor Morpheus. Without him, we're lost.
What do you mean, without him?
I'll say one other thing. President Harris said today in her post, in her speech, she said that President Trump was going to turn the U.S. military against the American public and use the public to promote his agenda. How many of you think that is true? Well, what's interesting to me is that the Biden-Harris administration has done something 2 weeks ago that has never been done in American history, which is to send exactly lethal force, to send a directive to the Pentagon, changing the law to make it legal for the U.S. military to use lethal force against American citizens on American soil. Technically, now it's legal for the U.S. military, under this directive, it will become legal for the U.S. military to shoot and kill Americans who engage in political protest because they disagree with policies in the White House. I'm not making this up. Any of you can look it up. This is a Democratic initiative. This did not come during the Trump administration. This did not come from Donald Trump. It came from the Democratic Party. And that's why I left the Democratic Party. Don't you want a president of the United States who is going to protect our Constitution? Don't you want a president who's going to end all the foreign forever wars? Don't you want a president who's going to stand up for free speech? Don't you want a president who's going to stand up for the Bill of Rights? And don't you want a president who is going to stand up for the Constitution of the United States in every way? And don't you want a president who has the guts to stand up to the CIA? And don't you want a president who is able to stand up to the military-industrial complex and to BlackRock and to Bill Gates and to State Street and Vanguard and Wall Street and Big Ag and Big Pharma and Big Food? And don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again? And vote for Donald Trump. God bless you all, and God bless America.
Are you sure you want to hear this? Morpheus believes in you, Neo. And no one, not you, not even me, can convince him otherwise. He believes it so blindly that he's going to sacrifice his life to save yours.
What?
You're going to have to make a choice. In the one hand, you'll have Morpheus's life. And in the other hand, you'll have your own. One of you is going to die. Which one will be up to you? I'm sorry, kiddo, I really am. You have a good soul. And I hate giving good people bad news. Oh, don't worry about it. As soon as you step outside that door, you'll start feeling better. You'll remember you don't believe in any of this fate crap. You're in control of your own life. Remember? Here. Take a cookie. I promise by the time you're done eating it, you'll feel right as rain.